I pranked my Karen neighbor by pretending to be a cop. Her reaction was priceless. There are bad neighbors. And then there's Karen. Karen wasn't just your run-of-the-mill, slightly annoying peek over the fence when you're minding your business kind of neighbor. No, Karen was a force of nature, a living, breathing catastrophe wrapped in a pastel cardigan, with a voice that could shatter glass and a glare so sharp it could cut steel. She was the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, the guardian of the HOA rules, the surveillance system that never slept. It didn't matter what time of day it was, Karen was watching, waiting, plotting. If your lawn was half an inch too tall, expect a violation notice taped aggressively to your door. If your trash bins weren't pulled in exactly 30 minutes after pickup, a firmly worded email was already in your inbox. And if she so much as suspected that you were enjoying yourself in any way that she deemed inappropriate, God help you. I had put up with her antics for years, the constant complaints, the nosiness, the way she always seemed to appear out of thin air the moment I tried to do literally anything outside my house. But the final straw came when she called the HOA because my porch light was too bright. Yes, my porch light. Apparently it was disrupting the peaceful ambiance of the street. That was when I knew. It was time for payback, and I had the perfect plan. If there's one thing Karen fears more than the possibility of someone existing happily within a 3-mile radius of her, it's authority figures. Karen loved to threaten people with the cops. She had called them on teenagers riding their bikes, on a neighbor's puppy for barking too much, on a group of kids who had the audacity to sell lemonade without a permit. Yes, really. But the second she thought the law might be coming for her, that would be a different story. So I got to work. Step 1. A fake police uniform. Well, sort of fake. I didn't want to do anything actually illegal, so instead of a full costume, I put together something that just suggested authority. Dark blue slacks, a matching button-up, a black belt with a few random pouches that looked official but were actually meant for holding snacks, and a pair of sunglasses that screamed, "I take my job too seriously." Step 2. A convincing badge. Now, before you judge me? No. I didn't make a counterfeit badge again, not trying to actually get arrested. Instead, I found an old security guard badge at a thrift store and modified it slightly. From a distance, it looked legit enough to make someone like Karen panic, which was all I needed. Step 3. A clipboard. Because nothing says bureaucratic nightmare like a clipboard filled with random papers that mean absolutely nothing. And finally, step 4. The perfect reason to investigate Karen. I mulled over the possibilities. I needed something believable, something that would get under her skin, something that would make her sweat. Then, it hit me. I would make her think she was under investigation for abusing the emergency services hotline. It was perfect. Karen loved to call the cops over nothing. If she believed she was being watched because of it, if she thought she might actually get in trouble, she would implode, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. The next morning, I made my move. Karen was outside tending to her flower bed, aggressively snipping at her hydrangeas as if they had personally insulted her. She was wearing her usual attire, a pastel sweater, khaki pants, and a visor that made her look like a tennis coach who had been banned from the country club for excessive complaining. I took a deep breath, adjusted my sunglasses, and strolled up her driveway with my clipboard in hand, exuding the confidence of a man who was about to change someone's entire world. "Ma'am?" I called out in my most official voice. Karen turned, squinting at me with suspicion. "Yes?" I stopped just a few feet away, flipped open my clipboard, and pretended to scan some very important but absolutely blank paperwork. "Are you Karen Thompson?" Her face immediately tightened. "Who's asking?" I sighed dramatically, as if I was really hoping she wouldn't ask that. Then, with calculated reluctance, I reached into my pocket and flashed my badge just long enough for her to see it before tucking it away again. It worked beautifully. Karen went pale. "Officer Daniel Smith," I said, making up a name on the spot. "Neighborhood Compliance Unit." She blinked rapidly, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "The what?" I kept my expression completely neutral. "Neighborhood Compliance Unit. We've received multiple reports about..." I flipped a page on my clipboard for dramatic effect, even though it was literally just my grocery list. "Repeated misuse of emergency services." Karen visibly twitched. "Misuse?" she repeated. her voice a little higher than before. I nodded, pursing my lips. "We've noticed a pattern of 911 calls originating from this address regarding, well, let's just say, non-emergencies." Her jaw clenched. "That's not true." I raised an eyebrow, flipping another page. "So you didn't call the police on a group of middle schoolers for loitering on the sidewalk?" Karen's eyes darted to the side. "That's different." I made a non-committal noise and scribbled something on my clipboard. Spoiler: it was just a doodle of a very angry stick figure. "And the puppy?" I continued, keeping my voice calm and measured. "You didn't report a golden retriever for disturbing the peace?" She was sweating now. That dog was barking constantly. I cut her off with a dramatic sigh, shaking my head. "Ma'am, I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident." I tapped my clipboard. "But I have a file here, and quite frankly, it doesn't look good." She swallowed. "What? What does that mean?" I slowly pushed my sunglasses down the bridge of my nose, meeting her gaze with the most serious look I could muster. "It means you're under review for potential community disruption violations." Karen made a noise that could only be described as a dying cat's final gasp. "Under review?" she choked out. I nodded solemnly. "We take these matters very seriously." She took a full step back, her face a horrified shade of beige. "Am I going to be arrested?" I held back a grin. "Not yet." Karen wobbled. I thought she might actually faint. It was glorious. By the time I left, Karen was convinced that she was officially on some sort of law enforcement watch list. For the next week, she was suspiciously quiet. No complaints. No HOA emails. No police calls. She even started waving at people. It was, without a doubt, the most peaceful week the neighborhood had ever known. It was quiet. Insanely quiet. No random complaints about kids riding their bikes too fast. No HOA letters mysteriously appearing on doors. No unhinged rants about how someone's garden gnome was an unauthorized lawn decoration. Karen had gone dark, and I was thriving. But here's the thing about people like Karen. They don't give up. They don't go down without a fight. They adapt. They scheme. They convince themselves that the world is out to get them, and then double down on their insanity. I had expected her to sulk. I had expected her to disappear for a while, maybe lick her wounds and reconsider her life choices. But what I hadn't expected was for Karen to go full-blown conspiracy mode. And that was when things really started to spiral. 3 days after my official visit as Officer Daniel Smith of the Neighborhood Compliance Unit, I noticed something off. Karen's house, which normally stood pristine, every blade of grass perfectly aligned, her flower beds looking like they were sculpted by Michelangelo himself, was now the site of a full-blown paranoia bunker. Her curtains? Shut tight. Her car? Moved from the driveway. Her Ring camera? Adjusted at a slightly lower angle as if she suspected someone was watching her from the trees. And the most unhinged part? She had put up a no trespassing sign. On her own lawn. Let me be clear, Karen was the trespassing police. This woman had personally marched onto people's property to inspect their fences, to measure the distance between someone's mailbox and the curb, to count how many flamingos were on someone's lawn, and now she was acting like she was on a government watch list. I knew then and there I had broken her. But I also knew Karen well enough to realize that this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. By the 5th day, the rumors had started. Karen, beloved by no one but feared by all, had been spotted whispering to people in the grocery store. At first I thought nothing of it. I mean, Karen had spent years whispering to people about violations she had discovered in the neighborhood, like she was some kind of suburban detective. But this time she wasn't snitching. She was warning people. I first heard about it from my next-door neighbor, Tom, who stopped me while I was taking out the trash. "Hey, he hesitated, glancing around as if Karen might be lurking in the bushes. "Did you hear what Karen's been telling people?" I raised an eyebrow. "Do I ever listen to what Karen says?" He exhaled sharply. "She thinks the government is watching her." I blinked. "What?" "She told Mrs. Delgado that she's under federal investigation." I choked on my own breath. "You're kidding." "She said she's being surveilled, that there are officials monitoring her movements and she's probably got a wiretap on her phone." I barely held in my laughter. It was even better than I could have imagined. Karen wasn't just scared, Karen was spiraling, but it got so much worse. That evening, the dreaded HOA group chat, the digital hellhole where Karen typically ranted about neighborhood standards, lit up like a bright light. Karen, emergency HOA meeting, attendance mandatory, 7 p.m. at my house. Do not be late. Oh, this was going to be good. Now, normally I would rather set myself on fire than voluntarily attend an HOA meeting. But this was different. I grabbed my popcorn and walked over just in time to see half the neighborhood gathering in Karen's extremely normal front yard, looking thoroughly confused. Karen herself stood on her porch, gripping a stack of very serious papers, her expression deadly serious. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice filled with the authority of someone who had definitely just Googled how to report yourself to the FBI. Nobody clapped. "I'm afraid our community is under threat," she continued, glancing around dramatically. "Certain individuals, perhaps even officials, are targeting homeowners with unjust investigations." People shifted uncomfortably. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. "They've been watching me." Someone coughed awkwardly. "I have reason to believe that I am the victim of covert surveillance," she pressed on, gripping her stack of papers tighter. "And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone." Oh, this was golden. Karen, the self-appointed queen of neighborhood order, had turned into a full-blown conspiracy theorist, and she was trying to recruit followers. This was so much better than I had ever planned. But then, Karen took it too far. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of texts from our neighborhood group chat. I scrolled through, still half asleep, and then I saw the message that nearly made me choke on my coffee. "Tom, South Karen called the FBI." I nearly dropped my phone. I read the message again, and again. But no, it was very real. Karen had actually, literally, called the FBI to report her own imaginary investigation. It took everything in me not to collapse into hysterical laughter. But it wasn't just that she called. It was how she called. Because as I kept scrolling, I found out that Karen had walked into the police station that morning, demanding answers. The best part? She had walked in there, with her HOA violation notebook, and slammed it down on the counter like she was solving a crime. She had insisted that she was under federal surveillance for reasons that are not clear but definitely unconstitutional. And when they, unsurprisingly, told her she was insane, she escalated it to the FBI tip line. The entire neighborhood was losing their minds, and me? I had to physically leave my house to avoid bursting out in uncontrollable laughter. Karen, my delightfully unhinged neighbor, had pranked herself. By the end of the week, Karen had effectively self-destructed. The HOA was avoiding her, the police were ignoring her, and, best of all, her own paranoia had kept her from reporting anyone for an entire week. It was peaceful, beautiful even. But the best part? Karen stopped complaining about me entirely. Whatever twisted fear she had of being monitored over her excessive 911 calls had completely neutralized her ability to snitch on people. And that, my friends, was the greatest victory of all. For a glorious, fleeting moment, I thought I had won. Karen had been silenced. Her paranoia had forced her into a self-imposed exile, keeping her too busy scanning for imaginary government agents to file her usual barrage of neighborhood complaints. The HOA was ignoring her. The police were sick of her, and I had witnessed the most incredible meltdown in suburban history. It was the perfect victory. But Karen was like a cockroach in a nuclear apocalypse, too stubborn to die, too delusional to admit defeat. And just when I thought she was finally out of my hair, she made her next move. It started subtly, or at least as subtly as Karen was capable of being. One morning, I stepped outside to grab my mail and nearly tripped over a brand new, private property no trespassing sign planted directly in the middle of her yard. I raised an eyebrow. We live in a suburban neighborhood, Karen, not Area 51. Then, I noticed the cameras. She had doubled the number of ring cameras on her house, one on every possible angle of her property, each positioned strategically as if she was preparing for an armed robbery, rather than the mild inconvenience of teenagers cutting through her lawn. And to top it all off, a motion-activated floodlight that blasted on with blinding intensity anytime someone so much as sneezed near her driveway. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The neighborhood group chat exploded that night. Tom: has anyone else seen Karen's house? Mrs. Delgado: why does it look like a high-security prison? Jamie: I walked my dog past her house, and the floodlight nearly gave me a seizure. Greg: is she okay? Me: oh, she's better than ever, because I knew exactly what was happening. Karen was doubling down. She was convinced the government was watching her, and instead of letting that paranoia fizzle out, she was feeding it, turning her house into a fortress of cameras, floodlights, and warning signs. And the funniest part? She had no idea that the only person watching her was me. A few days later, just when I thought Karen's antics couldn't get any dumber, she outdid herself. I was pulling into my driveway when I saw her standing at the edge of her yard, arms crossed, glaring at her mailbox like it had personally betrayed her. Now, under normal circumstances, I would have ignored her. But something about the intensity of her expression, the sheer rage burning in her eyes, told me that whatever was happening here was going to be hilarious. So, naturally, I lingered. Karen let out a dramatic sigh, pulled out her phone, and started taking pictures of her mailbox from multiple angles. I squinted. Was she documenting evidence? Of what? Then, she snapped a picture of my house. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, this was about me. I walked over casually, hands in my pockets. Everything okay, Karen? She turned to me, eyes narrowing into slits. I knew it. I blinked. Knew what? She jabbed a finger toward her mailbox. You've been tampering with my mail. I almost choked on my own breath. What? Karen huffed. Don't play dumb. I checked my mailbox this morning and someone had moved my letters around. That only happens when someone is messing with my mail. I stared at her. Karen, do you know how gravity works? She ignored me. I have photographic evidence, she declared, waving her phone at me. I took before and after pictures of my mail placement, and someone clearly shifted my utility bill 2 inches to the left. I struggled to keep a straight face. And you think I, what? Broke into your mailbox to rearrange your bills? Her eyes narrowed. It fits your pattern. My pattern? She crossed her arms. First the fake police investigation, now mail tampering. Oh, this was priceless. Karen had fully convinced herself that I was leading a government conspiracy against her, and she was gathering evidence like she was starring in a low-budget detective show. I couldn't take it anymore. I laughed. Hard. Karen's face reddened. You think this is funny? Oh, Karen, I gasped, wiping a tear from my eye. This is the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. She fumed. You just wait, she hissed. I'm reporting this to the postal authorities. And then she stormed inside. Karen, my deranged neighbor, had just declared war on the U.S. Postal Service. I was crying. Over the next few days, Karen's paranoia reached new heights. She started writing down license plates of every car that drove by. She installed a second floodlight, because apparently, one blinding spotlight of doom wasn't enough. And, best of all, she tried to report her mail tampering case to an actual post office employee, only to be completely ignored. I found out about that little disaster from Mrs. Delgado, who had been standing behind Karen in line at the post office. She went full Karen on them, Mrs. Delgado told me, barely holding in her laughter. Told the guy at the counter that she had incontrovertible proof that a high-level mail conspiracy was happening in our neighborhood. I wheezed. And then, she continued, wiping a tear from her eye, when they told her to file a report online, she threatened to call a postal inspector and demanded to speak to the postmaster general. I had to physically sit down. Karen had gone from suburban menace to full-blown FBI wannabe mail detective, and I had never been more entertained in my life. But then, Karen made a fatal mistake. She went back to the police station, and this time, they were ready for her. I don't know exactly what happened when Karen marched into the precinct for the second time, but based on the neighborhood gossip that spread like wildfire, it went something like this. 1. Karen demanded answers about her ongoing federal investigation. 2. The officers, now familiar with her antics, were less than patient. 3. When they told her there was no investigation, Karen insisted that they wouldn't tell her even if there was one. Someone, allegedly a very fed-up police sergeant, finally snapped and told Karen that if she kept making false claims, she might be investigated for filing fraudulent reports. That was when Karen vanished, like a ghost, like a criminal mastermind going into hiding. The ring cameras? Unplugged. The floodlights? Turned off. The neighborhood complaints? Non-existent. Karen had been humbled. Now the neighborhood was Karen-free. And as I sat on my porch, enjoying the peaceful silence, I realized something. Karen had been defeated by herself. All it took was a fake cop prank, a mailbox conspiracy, and a stern talking to from real authorities. And honestly, it was the greatest thing I had ever done. No complaints, no HOA letters mysteriously appearing on people's doors, no threats to report us to whatever authority she had latched onto that week. The floodlights had been turned off. The paranoia bunker that was once her front yard had been abandoned. It was peaceful. Too peaceful. A part of me, a very small, deeply paranoid part, wondered if Karen was simply biding her time, if she had retreated into the shadows to plot some kind of final counterattack. Maybe she was drafting a 50-page lawsuit against the entire neighborhood. Maybe she was petitioning Congress to create new laws against pretend investigations. Maybe she had entered a secret training program to become a real federal agent just to spite me. I had seen Karen bounce back from madness before. But this time she had been humiliated. And that was what made the difference. A week passed, then another, then a full month, and still, nothing. Karen, once the undisputed tyrant of the neighborhood, had vanished like a disgraced politician fleeing a scandal. The most unhinged part? She wasn't just avoiding me, she was avoiding everyone. The woman who once spent half her life marching up to people's doors to tell them their hedges were precisely 2 inches taller than HOA regulations allowed, was now actively dodging human interaction. It was glorious. Tom, my next-door neighbor, was the first to bring it up. "Did we break Karen?" he asked one morning, sipping his coffee while we both stood on our porches. I smirked. "I think she broke herself." He nodded slowly, deep in thought. "Good." And that was the general consensus of the entire neighborhood. No one missed Karen. No one checked on Karen. No one wondered what had happened to Karen. She had spent years making people miserable, and now that she had self-destructed, we had collectively agreed that we were better off without her. But then, something unexpected happened. It was a Saturday morning when I noticed it. I had just stepped outside to grab my mail, humming to myself, when something bright and obnoxiously large caught my eye. A for sale sign. In Karen's yard. I blinked. Then, I blinked again. Then I stared so hard my brain short-circuited. Karen. Moving? I whipped out my phone and immediately texted the group chat. Me. Karen is selling her house. Tom. Shut up. Mrs. Delgado. Are you joking? Greg. Is it legal to throw a neighborhood-wide party to celebrate? Asking for a friend. By noon, half the neighborhood had already found a reason to casually walk past Karen's house, whispering among themselves, trying to confirm the impossible. And sure enough, Karen was leaving. Now, logically, I knew I should just let it go. Karen was finally removing herself from our lives. She was packing up her insanity and leaving forever. But there was still one thing I needed to do. I needed to see her face. I needed to know if she knew. So, like the mature adult I am, I casually strolled outside that afternoon, taking my time, making sure I was visible enough for Karen to notice me. And sure enough, she did. She was standing in her driveway, overseeing some poor, miserable moving guy who looked like he had been held hostage into this job. The moment our eyes met, I saw it. The recognition, the fear, the undeniable understanding that I was the reason she was leaving. And you know what? She didn't say a word. Not a single passive-aggressive insult. Not a fake threat about HOA violations. Not a dramatic rant about government conspiracies. Karen, the woman who had made an entire career out of tormenting this neighborhood, just looked away. She didn't even acknowledge me. She just turned, marched inside, and closed the door. And that was when I knew. Karen wasn't leaving because she wanted to. She was leaving because she had been defeated. The second her moving truck was gone, the group chat exploded. Tom. Karen is gone. Jamie was so happy, Greg. It's over. We're free. And then we threw a party, a real party. An outdoor loud sound of laughing, grilling burgers on driveways kind of party. The exact kind of thing Karen had spent years trying to ban. And for the first time in a decade, the neighborhood felt happy. No one was being spied on. No one was being lectured about their recycling habits. No one was being reported for crimes that didn't exist. Karen was gone. The new neighbor, a retired teacher named Linda, moved in. She was kind, normal, and not at all obsessed with minor infractions. And Karen? Karen never contacted anyone again. No complaints, no emails, no final dramatic monologue. She just disappeared. Again, as I sat on my porch, sipping my coffee, watching the Karen-free neighborhood flourish, I realized something. The best revenge, the greatest revenge, was simply watching her destroy herself. All I had done was plant one tiny seed of paranoia, and she had taken that seed and lit her own life on fire. It was poetic, it was perfect, and most importantly, it was permanent, because Karen was never coming back.